The derelict warship floated in the darkness of space, a silent relic of a battle fought long ago. Its hull was battered, scarred by plasma burns and kinetic impacts that had left deep wounds in the metal. No lights flickered, no systems hummed, just a massive, lifeless structure drifting among the stars. For centuries, this vessel had remained untouched, except for the occasional scavenger crew that had come to pick apart its remains. Every species that had examined it came to the same conclusion. The ship was beyond repair. Its systems were too alien, too advanced, and too far gone to be restored. Entire engineering teams had studied its structure, trying to decode its power source, its control mechanisms, its weapon systems, but they had all failed. The ship had been declared dead. It had become just another ghost in space, a reminder of a war no one remembered. And yet, when a group of human cadets was sent to examine it as part of their training exercise, they did not see a lost cause. They saw a challenge. The Death World cadets were a special breed, humans from Earth, a planet classified as one of the most dangerous in the galaxy. Other species had evolved in safe environments, in predictable ecosystems where survival was relatively easy. But humans, they came from a world where nature itself tried to kill them every day. Their species had fought against extinction for millennia, adapting to hostile conditions, surviving disasters, and thriving where others would perish. They were stubborn, reckless, and dangerously creative. When the alien instructors brought them to the warship and told them to study its design, they didn't just take notes. They wanted to bring it back to life. The ship's interior was a mess of broken circuits, severed cables, and shattered control panels. The atmosphere was thin but breathable, though it carried the scent of rust and decay. Most of the ship's systems were unresponsive. Its power core was dead, its navigation was offline, and its engine was nothing more than a massive chunk of unpowered machinery. The cadets walked through the dark corridors, their boots echoing against the metal floor, their eyes scanning the ruined technology. Some of them had backgrounds in engineering, some in combat tactics, others in survival training, but they all shared the same mindset. Nothing was truly impossible until you gave up. Other species had failed because they tried to understand the ship before touching anything. Humans didn't work that way. They poked things, prodded them, took them apart, and put them back together. One cadet, a young woman named Riley, knelt beside a broken console, examining the wiring. She pulled a multi-tool from her belt and stripped the casing away, revealing the complex circuitry inside. Looks like they used a different power system than us, but the fundamentals are the same. If we can bypass the damaged pathways, we might be able to get some of these systems online. The alien instructors shook their heads, amused by the humans' optimism. They had seen this before. Deathworlders always believed they could fix the unfixable. The cadets worked fast, splitting into teams. Some searched for the power core, others tried to access the ship's AI, and a few focused on restoring basic lighting and gravity. Unlike other engineers who relied on strict protocols, humans improvised. They used whatever they could find, repurposing damaged components, creating makeshift repairs with salvaged parts, and using their instincts rather than following a rigid system. They worked with speed and confidence, driven by an almost reckless determination. Within an hour, they had managed to restore partial power. Emergency lights flickered, casting an eerie glow over the corridors. The ship, once thought dead, gave its first signs of life. A deep hum resonated through the structure as the cadets activated one of the ship's backup power cells. It wasn't enough to run the entire vessel, but it was a start. They used the restored power to access the ship's database, trying to communicate with its AI. The alien instructors watched in disbelief as the humans worked, their methods unconventional but undeniably effective. The instructors had expected them to study the ship for a few hours, take notes, and report back. They had never imagined the cadets would actually try to fix it. But that was the difference between Deathworlders and the rest of the galaxy. Humans didn't see abandoned wrecks. they saw opportunities. As the power stabilized, one of the cadets, a boy named Carter, managed to activate a control panel. The ship's AI flickered to life, its voice fragmented and distorted from years of disrepair. System malfunction. Core integrity compromised. The cadets exchanged glances, excitement flashing in their eyes. If the AI was still operational, even in a limited capacity, that meant there was hope. They worked even faster, rerouting power, bypassing damaged sections, and forcing the ship's systems to comply. Their hands moved with precision, their minds working through problems at a speed that left the alien observers stunned. They weren't just fixing the ship, they were bringing it back from the dead. By midday, the impossible had happened. The ship's engines, long dormant, let out a low, rumbling vibration. The cadets had restored partial functionality, enough to reactivate basic thrusters. The once abandoned warship, a vessel that had been drifting lifelessly for centuries, was moving again. The alien instructors stood in silent shock, unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed. It had taken other species years to conclude that the ship was beyond repair. The Death World cadets had it running before lunch. Riley wiped sweat from her forehead, grinning as she looked at the glowing console. Not bad for a bunch of students, huh? Carter laughed, patting the side of the control panel. Guess they shouldn't have told us it was impossible. The aliens, still in disbelief, approached the cadets cautiously. One of the instructors, a reptilian being with dark scales, spoke in a low, uncertain tone. How did you do this? Riley shrugged. We just got creative. The legend of humanity spread once again. In the galactic archives, the ship remained classified as unrepairable. But in reality, it was proof of what humans were capable of. They weren't the strongest, the fastest, or the most advanced species in the galaxy, but they were something far more dangerous. They were relentless. The warship had no right to function. It had been declared beyond saving, a relic of a forgotten war that had drifted through space for centuries. Its power core was dead, its systems shattered, and its engines nothing more than twisted metal. Countless alien engineers had attempted to repair it, but after decades of failure, the ship was abandoned. No species in the galaxy had the knowledge or skill to bring it back to life. But no species in the galaxy was quite like humanity. When the Death World cadets arrived for their training mission, they saw the same broken vessel, the same ruined technology, but they did not see failure. They saw a challenge. The instructors, experienced engineers from various advanced species, watched the humans with amusement. They had seen this before. Every species that had come before had tried, failed, and given up. The ship was too damaged, too alien, too far gone. The humans would learn the same lessons soon enough. The cadets, however, didn't seem to care. They moved with confidence, walking through the dark, ruined corridors of the warship, their boots echoing on the metal floor. Flashlights flickered over exposed wires, shattered control panels, and burned-out conduits. The ship had been torn apart by battle, and time had done the rest. But the cadets didn't hesitate. They began their work immediately. Riley, the team's lead engineer, crouched by a control panel, running her fingers over the cracked screen. If we can find the power source, we can at least get basic systems online, she said, her voice calm, as if she were discussing a simple repair job rather than an impossible task. Carter, the team's systems specialist, was already stripping the wires, testing connections. Most of the power relays are fried, but there's still some residual energy in the backup grid. If we can reroute it. He trailed off, already lost in thought. The alien instructors exchanged glances. They had seen experienced engineers try to make sense of the ship's technology and fail. The humans had barely been there an hour, and they were already making progress. The cadets worked with a kind of reckless confidence that made the instructors nervous. They bypassed damaged circuits with whatever they could find, reprogrammed broken systems with makeshift code, and used brute force when precision failed. Where other species had spent years trying to understand the ship's technology, humans experimented. They poked, prodded, and rewired, their instincts guiding them more than their knowledge. More than once, sparks flew as something overloaded, but the cadets only grinned, adjusted their work, and kept going. The first breakthrough came when Riley managed to reactivate a minor subsystem. The emergency lights flickered weakly, casting a dim glow through the corridors. The instructors, who had been watching with detached amusement, suddenly leaned forward. Deep within the ship, they found the heart of the problem. The main reactor, a massive structure of alien design, cold and lifeless. The damage was severe. Plasma conduits were ruptured, energy cells were drained, and the entire structure was coated in centuries of dust and corrosion. Every species before them had declared the reactor beyond repair. The cadets studied it for only a few minutes before getting to work. They worked without hesitation, stripping away damaged components, rerouting broken pathways, and using whatever materials they had on hand. At one point, Carter ripped apart a useless panel and repurposed its wiring to connect two critical conduits. Riley and another cadet manually reassembled a coolant system with little more than sealant and sheer determination. The aliens watching couldn't believe what they were seeing. Humans didn't just repair technology. They forced it to work, bending it to their will. Hours passed, and the ship slowly came back to life. The reactor remained silent, but auxiliary power surged through the vessel, activating long-dormant systems. Doors that had been frozen shut groaned open, computer terminals flickered with static, and the AI, thought to be irreparably damaged, let out a fragmented, glitching message. Systems offline, integrity compromised, emergency mode engaged. The instructors stared in shock. They had assumed the AI was lost, but somehow these Deathworlders had coaxed it into responding. Riley wiped sweat from her forehead, stepping back to survey their progress. "We need more power," she muttered. Carter nodded. "We're close. The reactor just needs a jump start." He turned to the instructors, his expression confident. "Do you have any external energy sources? Something we can use to trigger the ignition sequence?" The aliens hesitated. They had expected the humans to give up by now. They hadn't prepared for the possibility that they might actually succeed. Reluctantly, they provided a small portable generator, a device meant only for basic field repairs. It was nowhere near powerful enough to restart a reactor of this size. The humans didn't care. They rewired it, modified its output, and fed every bit of power into the ship's core. Sparks flew, energy crackled, and for a long moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low, rumbling vibration, the reactor flickered to life. The lights in the ship brightened, the hum of energy filled the air, and the AI's voice became clearer. Primary systems, partially restored. Power levels at 23%. The instructors were speechless. The ship was supposed to be beyond saving. These cadets had repaired it in less than a day. Carter grinned, slapping Riley on the back. "Told you we could do it," she smirked. "Wasn't even that hard." The alien instructors, still in shock, exchanged glances. One of them, a reptilian being with a deep, gravelly voice, finally spoke. "How?" Riley shrugged. "We don't like losing." The ship, once considered a graveyard, now pulsed with energy. It wasn't fully operational, not yet, but it was no longer a lifeless wreck. The cadets had done the impossible. They had proven, once again, why Deathworlders were feared and respected throughout the galaxy. Where others saw an impossible challenge, they saw a problem to solve. And when a problem needed solving, humans never stopped until they won. The legend of the Deathworld cadets spread quickly after that. The aliens who had once doubted them now spoke of them in hushed tones, their respect mixed with fear. The ship that had been abandoned for centuries would fly again, and it would do so because a handful of reckless, stubborn humans refused to accept failure. And this was just the beginning. The battle was already lost. That was what the alien strategists believed. The War Council of the Vorthan Empire had analyzed every possible scenario, every calculation, every tactical advantage. The numbers were clear. The human outpost on the barren world of Dro 7 was surrounded by an overwhelming enemy force. Their defenses were compromised, their supply lines cut off, and their fleet was too far away to send reinforcements in time. The Vorthan commanders, cold and logical, declared the battle unwinnable. The humans would either surrender or be annihilated. But what the Vorthan had never understood, what no species in the galaxy ever truly grasped, was the way humans thought. Inside the heavily damaged command center of the human outpost, Captain Elias gritted his teeth as the latest enemy bombardment shook the walls. Sparks rained from damaged consoles, and emergency lights flickered in the dimly lit room. His officers were battered, exhausted, and covered in grime, but none of them spoke of surrender. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of time. But Elias knew one thing. This fight wasn't over. Not yet. "Sir, enemy forces have begun their final assault," Lieutenant Carter reported, his voice tense but steady. "They're moving in with heavy artillery. Our shields won't hold." Elias glanced at the tactical display, studying the enemy positions. The Vorthan had precision, superior numbers, and overwhelming firepower. But humans had something else, something no computer algorithm could measure. He turned to his team, his mind racing. "All right," he said, "time to start thinking like Deathworlders." The alien species of the galaxy came from stable, controlled worlds, places where survival was easy and nature was kind. But humans had evolved on Earth, a place of violent storms, shifting tectonic plates, unpredictable predators, and relentless survival. That thinking had shaped them, forged them into creatures that saw solutions where others saw defeat. And right now, Elias needed that thinking more than ever. "Weapons?" he asked. "Running low," Carter admitted. "Ammunition's almost gone, and our missile systems are offline. Power? Critical levels. We've got maybe an hour before the generators fail completely." Elias exhaled slowly, his mind working through possibilities. The Vorthan believed this was a simple battle of attrition, but they weren't fighting another empire. They were fighting humans, and humans never fought fair. "All right," he said. "We lure them in." Lieutenant Rios frowned. "Sir, they have orbital support. We can't hold them off if they get close." "We're not holding them off," Elias replied. "We're trapping them." He pointed to the deep canyons that ran through the landscape outside the outpost, narrow ravines carved by ancient rivers. "We rig the canyons with explosives, force them into a bottleneck, and take out as many as we can. Then we hit their orbital support." The officers exchanged glances. "We don't have the firepower to take down an orbital fleet," Carter pointed out. Elias smiled grimly. "We don't need firepower. We just need them to think we do." Within minutes, the humans were moving. They worked fast, despite the exhaustion clawing at them. Every scrap of explosive they had left was buried along the canyon walls. They set up decoy artillery, makeshift missile silos that were nothing more than scrap metal and sensor jammers. They modified their remaining energy cores to send out false readings, tricking enemy scanners into believing there were hidden weapons systems underground. When the Vorthan launched their assault, they advanced exactly as expected, marching in precise, calculated formation. Their war machines rumbled forward, weapons primed. They were disciplined, organized, efficient, and that was their weakness. The first detonations ripped through the canyon, sending walls of rock crashing down onto the enemy forces. The Vorthan had no time to react. Their vehicles were crushed under tons of debris, their troops thrown into chaos. The humans opened fire, using what little ammunition they had left to sow further confusion. The Vorthan had expected a desperate feudal resistance. Instead, they were being torn apart. From orbit, the enemy fleet detected the weapons systems activating below. False missile locks lit up their sensors. Alarms blared through their ships. The human outpost, which had seemed defenseless, now appeared to have a hidden arsenal capable of striking back. Panic spread through the Vorthan ranks. Their commanders, relying on cold logic and calculations, had not accounted for human deception. They pulled back their ground forces, unwilling to risk further losses, and prepared for an orbital bombardment instead. That was their final mistake, because while they had been focused on the ground battle, the humans had been preparing something else. In the chaos, a single human dropship, barely operational, had slipped through the enemy's defenses, heading straight for the lead Vorthan command vessel. A handful of Marines, carrying nothing but improvised explosives and stolen enemy weapons, infiltrated the ship. The Vorthan had never considered the possibility that humans would dare such an insane maneuver. But humans didn't just think differently, they fought differently. Within minutes, the lead vessel was in flames. Explosions ripped through its core systems. The bridge was breached, and with their command structure in shambles, the rest of the fleet hesitated. That hesitation was all the humans needed. As the Vorthan forces scrambled to reorganize, the remaining human forces launched their final counterattack. Using the last of their energy reserves, they fired concentrated pulses at the enemy fleet, targeting their propulsion systems, disabling engines, forcing ships into chaotic retreats. The once organized assault collapsed into disorder. By the time human reinforcements finally arrived, the battle was over. The Vorthan, a species that prided itself on logic and precision, had been utterly humiliated, not by superior numbers, not by advanced weaponry, but by a way of thinking they could never understand. When the reports spread across the galaxy, other empires took notice. The Vorthan had calculated that the human outpost would fall in hours. Instead, the humans had held their ground, turned the battle on its head, and forced an empire to retreat. No, humans didn't think like the rest of the galaxy. They didn't surrender when they were outmatched. They didn't give up when things seemed impossible. They adapted. They tricked. They fought in ways no other species could predict. And now, the galaxy understood why humanity was feared. Because when faced with an impossible situation, humans didn't break. They just started thinking like Deathworlders. The Deep Space Research Station Argos 9 floated silently in the void, orbiting the gas giant Xyphos 3. It was a facility dedicated to experimental energy projects, funded by the United Earth Directorate, and home to some of the most brilliant scientific minds in the galaxy. But on this day, the station was not a place of scientific progress. It was a battlefield waiting to erupt. The alarms blared as red emergency lights cast eerie shadows across the metallic corridors. Dr. Helena Carter, the station's lead physicist, ran through the chaos, her heart pounding in her chest. The readings from the main reactor were impossible, energy levels spiking beyond control, fluctuating in patterns that defied logic. This wasn't a simple malfunction. Someone had caused this. Dr. Carter, Lieutenant Reeves, head of station security, caught up with her. His face was tense, his pulse rifle ready. "We have a problem." Helena didn't slow down. "We already have a problem. The reactor's output is increasing exponentially. If we don't shut it down, this entire station will be torn apart." Reeves shook his head. "That's not all. We've detected an unauthorized vessel docked at the lower bay. No identification, no transmissions. It's just sitting there." Helena stopped. An unknown ship. Now, her breath caught as the realization struck her. "They did this," she whispered. "The power surge, it's a diversion." Reeves nodded grimly. "We need to move. Fast." They sprinted through the corridors, heading toward the reactor chamber. The air was hot, humming with the unnatural energy coursing through the station. The reactor core, usually a controlled beacon of light, was now pulsing erratically, bolts of energy crackling along the containment walls. Several engineers were working desperately to stabilize it, but their systems were failing one by one. "The controls aren't responding," an engineer shouted. "It's like something's overriding them." Helena grabbed a console, typing furiously. The readings didn't make sense. Some external force was manipulating the energy flow, pushing it past safe levels. And then, the station lurched. A violent tremor ran through the structure, knocking them off balance. The reactor let out a deep, ominous hum. The surge is destabilizing the station's gravity field. Helena gasped. We have minutes before the core overloads. Reeves gritted his teeth. We're shutting it down. Now. He signaled his security team. Stay sharp. If someone's behind this, they're still here. Moving fast, they accessed the emergency override, a last resort to manually shut down the core. But before they could activate it, a sudden explosion rocked the far side of the chamber. Smoke and debris filled the air as figures in black armor emerged from the shadows. Intruders. Their weapons gleamed under the flickering emergency lights. Take cover, Reeves roared, opening fire. The room erupted into chaos. Plasma rounds lit up the chamber as the invaders fought back. They were skilled, precise, moving with deadly efficiency. Reeves and his team held their ground, but they were outnumbered. Helena ducked behind a console, her mind racing. They couldn't afford this fight. Every second wasted brought them closer to destruction. Then she saw it. A small, sleek device attached to the reactor's main power conduit. The source of the power surge. She had to reach it. Crawling low, she moved through the crossfire. Bullets and plasma bolts whizzed past, shattering screens and melting metal. Sweat dripped down her face as she reached the device, her fingers trembling. It was a sophisticated energy amplifier, force-feeding the reactor to keep it unstable, if she could disable it. A shadow loomed over her. She turned just in time to see one of the intruders raising his weapon. Time slowed. Her mind screamed move, but she knew she was too late. The shot was fired, and a blur tackled the attacker from the side, sending them both crashing into the floor. Reeves, do it now, he shouted. Helena didn't hesitate. She ripped the panel open, exposing the device's core. Her fingers moved instinctively, disconnecting wires, bypassing failsafes. The system fought back, but she was faster. One last override. One last command. The device shut down. Instantly, the reactor's wild energy began to stabilize. The pulsation slowed, the hum softened. The station stopped shaking. The overload had been prevented. But they weren't safe yet. The intruders, realizing their mission had failed, retreated. Smoke grenades filled the room as they fell back, their dark forms vanishing into the chaos. Helena coughed, her lungs burning. Reeves pulled her up. They're escaping, she gasped. Let them, Reeves said. We stopped the surge. That's what matters. But Helena knew better. This wasn't just an attack. It was a test. Someone out there had wanted to see what happened when they pushed human technology to its limits. And now, they had their answer. As the alarms finally silenced and the station's systems came back online, Helena looked out into the vastness of space, her heart still pounding. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The derelict warship floated in the asteroid belt, a forgotten relic of a long-dead war. Its hull was battered, engines lifeless, and control systems unresponsive. The ship had been deemed unsalvageable, abandoned by even the most skilled mechanics of the Galactic Federation. No one dared to waste resources on it. But today, it had new visitors. A team of humans, fresh out of Earth's elite engineering academy, had arrived. Their assignment: make it fly again, by lunch. Commander Jonas Grant stepped onto the wreckage with his team, the scent of burnt metal and old war lingering in the air. The warship, once a feared dreadnought, was now a graveyard of rust and decay. The Federation officials watching from the observation ship above had smirked when the humans volunteered for the impossible task. Deathworlders always overestimate themselves, one alien had muttered. But Jonas and his team weren't here to debate. They were here to prove them wrong. All right, Jonas said, cracking his knuckles as he surveyed the lifeless beast. We've got 4 hours. Let's bring this beauty back to life. The team split up, each engineer moving with practiced efficiency. Lena, the systems expert, dove into the command console, her fingers flying across the dead interface. Mason, their propulsion specialist, inspected the rusted engines, muttering curses under his breath. Dante, their weapons and energy expert, examined the power core, eyes narrowing at the tangled mess of wires and shattered conduits. Aaron, their wild card mechanic, simply grinned and started pulling apart broken panels with a reckless enthusiasm that worried everyone. The biggest challenge: power. The reactor had been offline for decades. Without power, nothing else mattered. Dante wiped sweat from his brow, analyzing the ancient reactor's remains. The alien tech was different from what humans used, but energy was energy. He glanced at Aaron, who was already rigging up a makeshift bypass. "Think we can force a cold restart?" he asked. Aaron grinned. "If by force you mean shock the damn thing until it begs for mercy, then yeah." Lena shouted from the bridge, "I need at least some power to boot the systems." "Working on it," Dant called back. Mason, still knee-deep in the engine bay, let out a triumphant laugh. "Good news, the thrusters aren't completely useless. Bad news, the main drive is dead. We're not flying this thing with traditional methods." Jonas smirked. "Then we improvise." He turned to Dante. "How much energy can we reroute from the emergency reserves?" Dante thought for a second. "Enough to jumpstart life support, maybe get partial controls." "That's human engineering," Jonas corrected. "Let's get to work." As the team raced against time, their actions became a blur of sparks, smoke, and ingenuity. Lena coaxed the navigation systems back to life, rewriting alien code with brute force programming. Mason reassembled the thrusters, bypassing safety protocols to get them to fire just once. Dante and Aaron hacked the power core, feeding it just enough energy to jumpstart the ship's functions. The warship shuddered. Lights flickered. A deep hum rumbled through the corridors. The ancient beast was waking up. From the observation ship above, the Federation officials watched in disbelief. "Impossible," one muttered. This ship was declared beyond repair. Back in the warship, Jonas and his team had no time to celebrate. The reactor was unstable, the engines barely holding together, and they still had one problem: launching it out of the asteroid belt. Mason wiped grease from his face. "We can fire the thrusters once. After that, we're coasting on inertia." Jonas checked his watch. 30 minutes until lunch. He grinned. "That's all we need." With final adjustments, the team took their positions. Mason and Dante prepared for the manual thruster ignition. Lena stabilized what little control she had over the ship's trajectory. And Aaron? Well, Aaron just prayed nothing exploded. "Everyone ready?" Jonas asked. "Define ready," Aaron muttered. Jonas smirked. "Fire the thrusters." The warship roared to life. The force of the ignition sent it hurling forward, breaking free of the asteroid belt. The crew cheered as the wreckage that had once been a dead ship now soared through space once again. Above, the Federation officials watched in stunned silence. By the time the ship stabilized, Jonas stretched his arms and turned to his team. "Lunch break." Mason laughed. "Hell yes." Aaron smirked, wiping soot from her face. "Told you it'd fly again."